This is the Ryder Cup DFS Tactics show. One special announcement before we get into the usual stuff. Tomorrow evening, normally I don't have shows on Thursday evenings, but tomorrow evening I'm going to do my predictions show, which is predicting the lineups, the pairings. It'll be really fun to do the singles matchups. What I think the captains might go or might put out there. I'm going to do a if I were captain segment, what I would do. So it's going to be fun. I hope you join me. I want to hear about your all's predictions and how you would handle things, or maybe some interesting pairings you want to see. I think everybody just for the laughs would want to see a Brooks and DeChambeau pairing, even though that would never happen, or a Brooks and Johnson, or Brooks and DJ. So hopefully you all will join me in that tomorrow. It should be a lot of fun, and then as you do every weekend on Sunday, you can make fun of my predictions and so on and so forth. But that's the one special announcement. As usual, my links to social media are down in the description. Follow me there. That's where I normally place my betting cards. I do not have a sportsbook betting card this week. To be quite honest, I want to play a little bit of DFS and just watch the Ryder Cup as a true golf fan. So I'm looking forward to that. And then all statistics are provided by FantasyNational.com. I say it every time, every show. It's an amazing resource. And finally, the chat is open. Let me know what you all want to see tonight, or who you're thinking about for your lineups, and who your captains are. Because we'll get into the specifics, at least for DraftKings scoring throughout the show. But chat's open. Would love the interaction. With that being said, let's get into the DFS tactics for the Ryder Cup. And we'll start, as we always do, with FantasyNational.com. You'll know that Sunday and Monday, the research and data dive show, I was not using the DraftKings pricing, more so that I just wanted to get a feel for the statistics, not have any duplicates, because when you're dealing with a captain's mode only format like the Ryder Cup, at least speaking in DFS terms, a captain's mode only contest, you're going to have duplicates. So you have Jon Rahm's captain salary here at 14.7, and then you're also going to get a repeat of Jon Rahm at 9,800, which is his golfer salary. Excuse me while I reach over here and get my drink. So I wanted to avoid the duplicates, just to gather some thoughts and all that. But I do have the DraftKings pricing up now, and you see some stars here. I've starred every golfer, so all 24 that aren't captains, and then I start a few captains to get some ownership projections. If you are a member of Fantasy National, I'm not getting the lineup generator to work, so if you are a member and you're getting it to work, please let me know what I'm doing wrong. Besides the usual everything, let me know what I'm doing wrong, and then maybe we can figure out where my idiocy lies. But I do have some ownership projections now with Fantasy National. It is projecting the same for captain and for golfer. So if you're a member at other places and are seeing some differences, let me know again in the comments and chat. Because we're here to just gather as much information as we can so we can make some optimal lineups. But I do have those ownerships on a spreadsheet that I normally do every DFS Tactics show, so we'll get into that. But I think where I need to start first is in the mixed condition model. So I built a 13 statistic or 13 filter data model for the Data Dive show. And I was very adamant then that was way too many statistics or filters. I mean, you were getting down into the nitty gritty. as I thought about it through the week, and this is such a unique format, that I went more what I call overhead statistics: the strokes gained approach, strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained, around the green, and so on. Because this is really going to be a test of all of the skills of golf, especially considering foursomes or alternate shot. Guys are going to have to hit all of the shots. Normally they do in stroke play, yes, but alternate shots such as different dynamic, where you have certain guys that tee off on the odd holes, and then the other partner tees off on the even holes, and there's a lot of strategy there, and sometimes guys just don't have to hit the long iron approaches, or it just so happens that most of the putts come from this guy. It's just the way a weird format like that works. So I wanted to just kind of get an overhead statistical view, at least in the major categories. Now you'll see that I've added a few others that I think really play here at Whistling Straits, and I'll go through them. But you'll see that I have 9 different statistics that I've put in there instead of the 13. But when we go to the Excel spreadsheet, I've got about 6 that I have, at 0%. I still wanted to see who plays well, who doesn't, given certain criteria and all that. But as for the percentages, I'll go through them real quick. Everyone knows that's been a follower of me or watched the show knows that I prefer strong iron play. I prefer the Colin Morikawas, the Corey Connors of the world, the Paul Caseys, because generally speaking, irons will translate from course to course, year to year, so on and so forth, where putting is a very volatile, very fickle statistic. You can be extremely on one week, extremely off the other, and I don't want to depend on that. So, strokes gained approach, 15%. Having said that, putting is so important here at Whistling Straits. I've got that at 15%. I removed the fast from bent. Monday, I was looking at fast bent greens. With the weather that has come in, there's been a little bit of rain this week, and trying to think of playing to the Americans' strength. They probably want to soften the greens a little bit. Again, this is just conjecture. I have no, firm evidence, firm data on that. But Americans more typically are bomb and gouge or hit the ball higher and all this stuff. The American way of golf is a lot different than the European way of golf. So my guess, you can't replace the fact that they're bent greens. But I removed the fast filter because I think there may be some times where they're going to try to slow them down a little bit to try to give the Americans an advantage, since it's on, obviously, American home soil. So that's why I removed the fast filter, and I still got it 15%. When we looked in the Data Dive show and the research, but more so the Data Dive, we noticed that proximity was a very big indicator of success here at Whistling Straits. And not only that, thinking about the Ryder Cup format, alternate shot, and even 4-ball to a lesser extent. The closer you are to the hole, granted, especially in the alternate shot, the closer you hit it to the hole, the less stress you put on your partner to make that putt. But even in 4-ball, if your partner's, trying to chip or, has a 40-foot putt for birdie, that just frees up the partner that's 40 feet away to just, jam it, try to, just make the putt instead of, in stroke play, probably lagging it up there for a comfortable par. In the Ryder Cup in 4-ball, that partner that's 40 feet away, just hit it. So what if it goes 10 feet by? You're going to get a par regardless, probably, because your partner is, say 15 feet for birdie. So your partner is in for par. Why not try to just make the 40-footer? So proximity is going to be very important, I think. I put that at 15%. And then strokes gained off the tee. We saw how much driving is important here at Whistling Straits. I got that at 10, along with the driving distance in of itself at 10%. I've added birdies are better gained, thinking that along the lines of 4-ball, birdies are going to be king. If you birdie a hole, that is really putting an astronomical amount of pressure on your opponents. And taking that a step further, if you're eagling a hole, that's almost a guaranteed, point for that match. That's a hole one, pretty guaranteed. It's really hard to duplicate eagles. So, that's why I wanted to really put an emphasis on the birdies are better gained. And this is definitely more of a 4-ball statistic as opposed to the alternate shot for some statistic. But it's certainly something to keep in mind. We noticed that the par 4s and the par 5s played a very big factor at Whistling Straits, so I kept those at 10%. You'll notice that I took out the specific yardages of par 4s and par 5s. Those were 2 of the columns that I put onto the side, as you'll see in the spreadsheet, that I still wanted to look at, but it gave it 0%. But I still wanted to see who played, essentially the drivable par 4 as well, and those 550 to 600 yard par 5 as well. Last statistic, I only had 5% left, and honestly, around the green, I don't know how much is going to come into play this week, but if both teams miss the green, then it's going to. Again, the trouble around the green at Whistling Straits is daunting. No exaggeration, when you have 16 feet deep bunkers, guys are going to really pay the price if they're not hitting the green in regulation. So I don't know how much around the green is going to come into play. But again, I just kind of wanted to have those overhead, those summation statistics, I guess, is the way I'll put that. So there's the look at the data model for me when I'm considering the DFS tactics. And of course it didn't load because that's the way things go for me. Let's try this again. Ow. I apologize. I'm going to have to change views back to the non-DraftKings format to generate this data model. And not a lot has changed from Monday. If you have my rankings from Monday, not a lot has changed, although the top has. Jon Rahm's no longer number 1. He is still number 2. But Patrick Cantlay rises to number 1, and that's probably most because of the putting and the removal of, I think it's the par 5s that he doesn't play extremely well, the specific par 5 lengths. As you can see, when you're adding 5% on a putting statistic when you're number 1, that's actually a pretty big deal. So he jumps up to number 1 for me in my statistical model. Then Jon Rahm, Rory, Paul Casey, and Victor Hovland. You'll notice a very European-themed top for me. And Rahm, Rory, Casey, Hovland, and even Lowry is 6th. The only American is Patrick Cantlay. Now, he is number 1, but it's the only American that I have in the top 6. Then you have Xander Bryson at 7-8, Hatton at 9, and Sheffler at 10. So the top of my data model is European dominant. So it's a telling way to see where I'm leaning to give a little foreshadowing for tomorrow in some predictions. Now, to be fair, the final 6, let me cut off that. The final 6 in my rankings are all Euros as well. So I have literally the bottom 6 of my rankings are all the Euros. So half of the European team is rated down here. So this team is very top heavy in my rankings. Now, having said that, I would definitely rate Sergio and Poulter quite a bit higher because of the Ryder Cup experience, their Ryder Cup success. And even to a lesser extent, Lee Westwood, who's playing in his 11th or 12th Ryder Cup, and he's been really darn successful, at least in the team formats. Now, he hasn't played singles very well, but everybody knows Ian Poulter, the American assassin. He's undefeated in singles. yada, yada, yada. So I would move him higher in my personal rankings. I'm just going by Fantasy National here, which means on the inverse, the American team for me is balanced on the rankings. They've got the number 1, and then 7, 8, and literally 10 through 18. So a very balanced squad here for the Americans. That means a lot of ability to mix and match. We basically know 2 of the pairings for the Americans. I don't think it's any secret. Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele are going to be paired. They were paired quite a bit at the President's Cup in 2018. Both are California guys, California boys. Pretty good friends from what I understand. So that's definitely going to be a pairing that we're going to see, if not all 4 sessions, certainly 2 or 3. And then the other pairing for the Americans is pretty obvious as well. It's Jordan Spieth. Gosh dang it, I wish it would stop highlighting it all. Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas. Those 2 have wanted to play together for a long time. They grew up in competitive golf, amateur and so on and so forth. They've wanted to play together. They played a little bit together at the President's Cup, I believe. They've been wanting this, so they're going to be a team. They can almost, I wouldn't quite put the house on it, but, perhaps put the garage on it. So those 4, or a third of the team for Team America, for the Americans, are pretty set in stone. Now, they might mix and match, a session here or there, but, I'm pretty confident that those 2 squads, I wouldn't be surprised if they sent them out all 4 sessions. To be honest, I would not be surprised if they sent them out all 4 sessions. But the rest of the team can pretty well mix and match given the place in the rankings. Now, there are a couple of question marks. I think the biggest one would be Bryson DeChambeau. Who are you pairing with him? Or if he's in 4-ball, who are you having play with him? What pod? If you're going to give him an alternate shot format, who are you pairing with him? With that circus and all that. Brooks Koepka's health. Where is he with his wrist? Colin Morikawa, is he fully recovered from the back issue from the Olympics? He says he is. His results would say otherwise. So there's quite a few question marks for the Americans coming in. Where you don't have question marks, you just have some lack of performance for the Europeans, is in people like Lee Westwood. Now, he is a very good Ryder Cup player, so that alleviates some of that. But Lee Westwood, since his 2 solo seconds in March, has not played well. I'll bring him up here, and we kind of looked at him a bit in the data dive. He just hasn't played well since the 2 solo seconds in March. In fact, it says he's gained 1.1 in strokes total. That's hard to believe, seeing all this red. Now, last 10 is certainly negative. But you see quite a bit of red here. He just hasn't been playing well since March. He almost top 20 the Byron Nelson, which is fine. It's a good showing. But he wasn't great in the FedEx Cup playoffs. He wasn't awful, but he wasn't great. Made the cut to a middling finish at the Open, a very middling finish at the U.S. Open. So he's got some question marks in form. Tommy Fleetwood, fantastic player. His game has never translated, has never come over to the to American soil. His accolades on the European Tour are astounding. And for whatever reason, when he comes stateside, it just doesn't translate over here. He's got a 10th at the Arnold Palmer. He's got a few high finishes. Last year, last March, 3rd at the Honda before the shutdown. Again, like I said, the 10th, the top 15 at the Wells Fargo this year. There's been a lot of red in his area too. And what he's known on for the European Tour is his strokes gained approach. I mean, he was supposedly a world-class iron player, and he still is over in Europe, but in America, it just hasn't translated. These are not Colin Morikawa-esque iron numbers. So there's a question mark for him. The same can be said for Wiesberger. His game hasn't translated well over here on American soil. Now, his strokes gained approach has certainly been a lot better lately. He's never been a good putter, even on the Euro Tour standards. But, he had a fourth at the RSM, but, you see a lot of missed cuts here. To his credit, if you'll take a closer look at the, tournaments that he's competing in, Open, U.S. Open, PGA, Masters. The last 4 tournaments he's played on the at least data gathering wise at Fantasy National have been the majors. He did play at the Texas Open. I guess this again conjecture. I don't know for sure. To get kind of accustomed to American golf or fly over here a week early like the Americans do to play in the Scottish Open before the Open Championship. Played in the Arnold Palmer. It's a big event. He played in WGCs. So when you see these miscuts, they're a bit misleading because he plays in these high-profile tournaments. But even then, it's still he still doesn't have great finishes. Apologies if you heard that. That is my Bluetooth speaker. I'm actually gonna I'm gonna shut it off so it doesn't go off again. So yeah, while there isn't health concerns for the Europeans, there is certainly some performance concerns, or at least recent form concerns coming in for the Europeans. But there's a look at my data model, and instead of going through this with the DraftKings, I think I may bring it up here just so we can refer back to it. But I'm going to basically use the Excel spreadsheet that I normally make for you all pretty heavily tonight. Before we switch to that view, I have to do some manipulation off to the side here for the viewers because it gets skewed. The last thing I want to do, let's take a look at the weather again real quick, since this is a web page view. Friday has actually calmed down a little bit. You see the 39 mile an hour gusts overnight Friday evening. That was actually earlier in the day, earlier in the week, but that has been since moved to Friday evening. So Friday morning, the foursomes looks pretty calm. And for those who don't know the schedule, there is 18 holes or 4 matches of foursomes in the morning, Friday morning. So that's alternate shot, and 4 ball. So 4 matches of 4 ball in the afternoon. And that is the same for both days. The host country chooses the format. So the Americans have chosen 4somes in the morning, 4 ball in the afternoon, and then Sunday is always singles. So the 4somes on Friday looks fairly calm. You got a little bit of gusts here, but nothing outrageous like it was earlier in the week. However, Saturday is, this is European style golf right here. You get some rain overnight. The high is 63, 64 on Saturday. You've got sustained winds of about 18 mile an hour with gusts up to 26. I'm going to round up and say 30, but 25 to 30 miles an hour. That isn't quite Open Championship, wind, but it's pretty darn close, and it makes sense since this golf course is on the coast of Lake Michigan. So wind's going to be a factor, especially Saturday. And when you have windy conditions, you tend to favor Europeans. Sunday looks pretty nice, to be honest. A little bit of gust and chill in the morning, but overall it looks like a pleasant day. 70, low winds. So if this wind on Friday kind of gets pushed back into the day, so it looks like it could affect the 4 ball. pretty easily. It looks like Saturday's a crap. I mean, it's just going to be fun dealing with that wind all day, it looks like. So if this little pocket of weather here gets pushed, into the day, that's going to be, I think, a pretty big advantage for the Euros. As it is right now, I mean, I don't want to say the Americans have the favorite because it's calm wind, but generally Euros play better in the wind. So I don't see a lot of issues with the foursomes, the alternate shot. Now Saturday, again, like I said, is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. So I wanted to bring that up just to kind of give you a look at what I've been looking at. So let me bring up the Excel spreadsheet that I normally do week over week in the DFS Tactics show. And you'll see here, I do not have any repeated golfers. Instead, I've split it out into two different columns for their salary. Here, as a captain here, and as the regular golfer there. I wanted to see if I could get different data for how people are choosing their captains versus, regular lineup. I wasn't able to get that on Fantasy National. They just don't have it out. So again, if you're watching, let me know if you're seeing some different types of data. But as is, I'm just going to use these percentages for tonight's show. And because there's only 24 people to discuss, I'm hoping to build a few lineups for you all. I'm definitely going to give you one that I've been toying around with. It's probably one that I'm going to submit in my contests. But first, let's sort this by price. Let's do price by regular golfer, largest to smallest, and then we'll just go from there. So no one is 10,000 as a regular golfer. John Rahm's the highest at 9,800, with a captain salary of 14,700. So let's just do the 9,000s regular. You've got John Rahm, Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy, and Patrick Cantlay. Well, 3 of the 4 are my top 3, and then Justin Thomas actually rates out a bit lower. Surprisingly, he does not rate well in birdies or better. 18th of 24. So that's where he's getting knocked. Of course, he's got some pretty middling statistics. He's never been a great putter. His off the tee has been erratic a little bit. He just doesn't have a lot of elite statistics except for this strokes gained approach. And you'll also notice, I think most of the time, and especially Monday, I believe I was using 24 rounds mostly. I went to 36. I just wanted to get a complete view of basically the calendar year. Most likely, most of the players for 36 rounds went back to either the Players' Championship or right before it, to give you some context on what 36 rounds means for these players. And you can also see over here, the last column's getting a little cut off. I can move it over for you a little bit since these are in, or they were in my rank order, and I can put them back that way. But the only thing that's getting cut off is the captain salary and my rank. But you can see what I was also kind of looking at, factoring in, although it's at 0% in the data model. Because of the wind, and especially earlier in the week, it was projected to be very windy Friday and Saturday. I wanted to see strokes gained total, who just plays best in the wind. And the reason why that was at last 12 is that there's just not a lot of windy AF conditions in the Fantasy National database. I believe the player with the most was Ian Poulter with 11 rounds in the past calendar year of rounds that were considered windy AF. So I really limited that. I didn't want to bring in 2019, 2020 data. So I just stuck to the last calendar year and then filtered it down to last 12. So in the wind, essentially. Shane Lowry, Sergio, Harris English, Paul Casey, and DJ. Oh, there's actually a few at fifth. So those four, Shane Lowry, Sergio, Harris English, and Paul Casey are top four in the wind. And then you've got several guys at five here. You got DJ, Morikawa, Feno. Those are all tied for fifth. So that gives you an idea. Again, like I was saying, a pretty Euro-themed, windy top leaderboard with Sergio at 2, Paul Casey at 4, and Shane Lowry at 1. Harris English was kind of surprising to see that he plays well in the wind, but can't argue it. I mean, third in strokes gained total for windy conditions. To the same token, I went ahead and went last 24 with Pete Dye in the last calendar year. Again, there's not a lot of courses, Pete Dye. There are enough. There are a few. I think 30, maybe 31 or so was the max. But there were a lot of people in the single digits as well. So I kind of try to narrow it down, or at least what you call normalize the data to the last 24. And see who plays best on Pete Dye courses. In that case, it's Colin Morikawa and Shane Lowry tied for first. So you've got the number one wind and the number one strokes gained total. Strokes gained total. Number one in the wind and tied for number one on Pete Dye courses. It's a pretty good combination there in Shane Lowry. So those two are at number one. And then tied for third, you had Brooks and Matthew Fitzpatrick. Brooks is a name that kind of, I don't know what where you're listening or getting information for the Ryder Cup this week, whether it's radio or podcasts or TV. Where I've gotten information and just people I enjoy listening to in the business. Brooks is kind of flying under the radar a little bit. Again, he's got that wrist concern. He also made some waves about not being the biggest fan of the team aspect of this. So, it's hard to say where he is in that. And also Paul Casey, number 2 in strokes gained total on Pete Dye. So you got Casey at 4th and 2nd. We've talked about Lowry, 1st and 1st. Morikawa, 5th and 1st. That's not bad at all. Some other names that might jump out here. John Rahm is 9th and 6th. Generally speaking, if you're good at one, you're not good at the other, though, as you can see here. Bryson's at 6th and 11th, but you've got a lot of 5th and 22, 15, 24, 18 and 8, 17 and 3. So, highlighting the two that are very good strokes gained total, you got Shane Lowry, Paul Casey. I'll put Morikawa 5th and 1st. I'll put that in there. Those three are good at both. And then I just use regular proximity. I felt like that was a more direct indicator of who played well at Whistling Straits. But because the course is so long and such a what's the word I'm looking for? Such a bevy, I guess, is the word, of your approach shots come from 200 plus. I do want to see who plays their long irons the best. So, in that regard, you got Brooks Koepka, Paul Casey. 3rd is Justin Thomas. 4th is Tyrrell Hatton. 5th, Victor Hovland. So, now you've got some names here like Justin Thomas, who plays well on Pete Dye and long irons. That's pretty good. Just missing on both of those. 6th, Bryson, Pete Dye and long irons. There's Brooks, Pete Dye and long irons. Casey's been in all 3. 4th, 2nd, 2nd. Tyrrell Hatton, 4th and 14th. So there's a few names that are starting to get a little bit of overlap there. And then finally, we talked about this in the Data Dive show. I ended up putting these in this column, or in this kind of look of statistics. the drivable par 4s and the length of par 5s at Whistling Straits. So the drivable par 4s, Justin Thomas is actually the best at those, tied with Paul Casey. You see here, Paul Casey's got a lot of high statistics here. I am really high on Paul Casey this week. Shane Lowry, 4th at drivable par 4s. He's got a lot of high statistics that weren't being factored into the data model. John Rahm, he plays drivable par 4s and length of the par 5s well. 6th and 6th, Cantlay. 6th and 1st. It's actually surprising. We were talking about Matthew Fitzpatrick on the Data Dive show. He is one of the best off the tee in this field. And you don't think about that with Matthew Fitzpatrick, but look, he's number 1, strokes gained, par 5s of the length that are at Whistling Straits. That's a big advantage. To take advantage of par 5s in this format. Say you play him in best ball, if he, gets an eagle on one of his rounds, that's a hole 1 basically we talked about. So the fact that he is so good on these par 5s, he's good on the drivable par 4s. He's good on Pete Dye courses. Now he certainly has some red. He has not been very good with his approaches this year, nor his long iron. Sorry, there he is. Long iron, so that's definitely a concern. His proximity, which kind of ties into his approach, hasn't been good. He hasn't played normal par 4s well. So there are a lot of highs and lows with Matthew Fitzpatrick. I'm actually high on Matthew Fitzpatrick this week because of the off the tee game. I think off the tee is really going to be a factor, and especially if Padraig Harrington throws him out in an alternate shot where he can take advantage of the drivable par 4s. And again, off the top of my head, I don't know which ones those are. I know number 1 is perhaps 14 and 6. I can't remember. I apologize. Again, if you're watching, please jump in chat. Let me know what holes are the drivable par 4s. But if Padraig Harrington can take advantage of that, get him either off the tee on the par 5s or playing these drivable par 4s in an alternate shot format, that's an advantage. So again, I just wanted to highlight these columns here while you see them, because I really wanted to look at them. So example, somebody like Paul Casey, who is kind of down here in price. He is, what's he in my rankings? He's 4th, so he's pretty high up in my rankings, but even so, you see a 4th, 2nd, 1st, 7th in categories that I wanted to see but didn't have a calculated percentage in the model. He could have very well been higher. Thanks to this. Shane Lowry's another one. 1st, 4th. He's 6th. I believe he was 3rd or 4th on Monday. The fact that I'm taking out these 2 and that really hurts his it hurts his ranking in the mixed condition model when I'm taking out 3 things that he does very well. So again, I just wanted to highlight those for you. But let's start digging into each golfer here. And again, I won't go. I won't talk much about captainship until we get into the scoring format. But I just kind of want to give an overall view. Let's start at the 9Ks. Again, 3 of the 9Ks are top 3 in my rankings. Justin Thomas falls off. Patrick Cantlay number 1, Rory number 2, Jon Rahm number 3. Now Rahm is the most projected owned by National Fantasy right now at 43.8%. Let me clean this up for you all because I hate seeing all those zeros. He's at 43.8%. That's a lot. Now, how many lineups is that generating? I don't know, but you got to understand, with only 24 golfers, guys are going to be used. For example, Lee Westwood's the lowest at 9.5%, and 9.5% in a normal PGA Tour event is middling for ownership. You can't really call it a pivot, but it's not chalk. It's just middling. And that's the lowest. I mean, that is the purest of pivots this week at 9.5%. So 43.8 guys are rightfully so thinking, hammering Jon Rahm, whether that's captainship or golfer. Because you got to figure he's going to probably play all 4 rounds, at least 3 of them for sure. Now, if Padraig Harrington maybe wants to rest him once for the singles matches, okay, but it's imperative that you find golfers that you think are going to play all 4, or at the minimum 3 of the 4 rounds, because everybody plays singles. So when I say rounds, it's the 2 foursomes and the 2 4-ball rounds. There's every reason to believe Jon Rahm will be one of those guys. He's number 1 in the world. He needs no explanation on why you would want to use him. I would probably curtail my ownership just because everybody here is on him. But I'm certainly going to have to be honest, I'm probably going to have exposure to everybody in some way, form, or fashion. I would probably limit mine on Jon Rahm seeing this. If I knew he was going to sit at 44% ownership, I would probably curtail my ownership a little bit and say, quote, pivot to somebody like Rory, who is the least owned right now in this, in the 9,000s. 35% is, by no means a pivot, but if you're going this high on the leaderboard for a regular golfer, there's a lot to like here for Rory. I'm confident he's going to play 3 of the 4 rounds, if not all 4. He's surprisingly kind of struggles at the par 5s, but otherwise, the par 4 is number 1. Second in birdies or better, second in driving distance, second in putting on bent greens. Rory doesn't get a lot of credit for his putting. He's a very darn good putter. He's like DeChambeau. To be honest with you, DeChambeau does not get enough. Sorry, there's DeChambeau. He doesn't get enough credit for how good of a putter he is. He's a very good putter. He just gets all the accolades because of the distance and the birdies and the eagles and all that stuff. Demolishing par 5s. But he's a pretty good putter as well. But Rory's a very good putter. So he's got a couple of middling stuff here. The par 5s he hasn't played well, but I like Rory this week. He's certainly a captain that I'm going to be using. I'm confident he's going to play at least 3, if not all 4 of the rounds. And you're saving a little bit of money. You're saving $1,000 from captaining Jon Rahm. So I like Rory. It's not that I don't like Justin Thomas. I certainly like Patrick Cantlay. He's number 1 in my rankings. He's got a couple of factors here that necessarily doesn't play the best in the wind. He's not the best with his long irons, but he's number 1 in my rankings. I'm going to be using him. He doesn't have anything that's going to statistically wow you. He's just consistent. Yes, he's the number 1 putter on bent. A lot of that has been in the FedEx Cup. He was just on a heater. Second on par 4s, 4th on par 5s. He doesn't wow you. He is just a consistent player, consistent golfer. He has no major weaknesses in his game. He's just a solid all-around, premier golfer. People might not like him because he's very subdued. He doesn't. He looks like he's almost bored on the golf course. He doesn't get very animated. But I would call him a superstar in the game. He is. He's a superstar in the game. It's not like I don't like Justin Thomas either. I think this course actually sets up pretty well for Justin Thomas. And his records, as we'll go here, these rankings they're up to date. Okay, so for example, Justin Thomas in his Ryder Cup, he's 4-1. He's 1-1 in 4-ball. He's undefeated in 4-some, so alternate shot. His partner Jordan Spieth is 2-1 and 2, so that's a pretty good combination there for foursome for alternate shot. And when you factor in the President's Cup, he's 6-2-2 in that. Spieth is 8-5-1. Now Spieth has really struggled in singles, and that's the case in Ryder Cup and President's Cup. He's 0-6 in singles matches. But staying with Justin Thomas, I mean, he's been a very good team format style player. Sorry, this is bugging me. This is more of a cleanup for me. Apologies, because Berger hasn't played the President's Cup, but Morikawa. But yeah, Justin Thomas is a very good team style player. So I think 11th is probably a bit low for him. It's the same reason like I'm going to rank Ian Poulter higher than 20th when I'm factoring in decisions here, because Ian Poulter is made for the Ryder Cup. That is what Ian Poulter was born for. So I think he's better than 20th. Again, this is just by numbers, but I have no qualms using JT, but I really like Rory and the value that you get here if he's the least owned 9K guy. Now, having said that, him being the lowest 9K owned player is still the fourth highest, because the next highest is Victor at 34.5. So take that for what it's worth. These four are the most used golfers at Fantasy National right now. So again, take that for what it's worth. But if you're looking to get a little bit of leverage on people who are, up at this point of the leaderboard, or price board, then Rory's your guy. Moving to the 8Ks, you got Spieth, Schauffele, Hovland, DJ, and Desham. Let's go ahead and cover the elephant in the room, Desham. If this course is set up pretty well for Bryson, there's several par fours that he can drive. The off the tee numbers are fantastic. Birdies are better. He can go and eagle a par 5 when nobody has business being on the green in 2. He generally plays windy okay. He's pretty good on Pete Dye courses, good with long irons and so on, or at least 200 plus. Those are mid irons for Bryson. When people are hitting 3 irons, he's hitting 7 irons. But there are some concerns. I mean, I've talked about it. Who does Captain Stricker pair him with? His around the green game is shit. So if his if you put him out in alternate shot and foursomes, and if his partner doesn't find the green, you've lost the hole, because he's not going to recover very well. He has not been historically best with the irons. His proximity takes a dip because of that. I have been telling you, I'm moving Poulter up, I'm moving Thomas up in these rankings. Desham's probably on one I'm moving down. I understand why the numbers are saying what it is. He's 8th, all of this stuff. The course sets up well for him. I have my concerns in a team format. Now on singles, I think he's going to play very well. I do. I think he's going to play very well in the singles, because he can just play his own ball. He can do his own calculations and all that. So again, I just have my concerns with foursomes, especially. Now, 4-ball is a bit different in the sense that, example, again, I'm not going to, this is pure conjecture. If you put him with, say, somebody like Daniel Berger, who's just consistent, like he's just solid. He's not going to go out and overwhelm a golf course. He's not the longest hitter. He's not the best at birdies or better. You put someone like that, or Sheffler, who's pretty balanced, with Desham, who's gonna, you feel comfortable with the pars, and maybe they sneak in a birdie here and there. then that's a pretty good combo with in 4-ball with Desham, and just let Desham try to just hit eagles. That would be one strategy you could, Captain Stricker could apply. So again, with DeChambeau, if he's at 29%, he's the second, third highest owned in this range. I'm okay, fading him, especially because I'm not as high on him as others. I'm okay fading DeChambeau. Talk about Jordan Spieth. I have him at 18th in my rankings. I mean, he's not been good proximity. His approach hasn't been good. For as much as Jordan Spieth has come back this year, his recent form has actually not been great. Since his win, it wasn't at the Valero, was it? Maybe it was. I apologize. I'm going to have to check real quick, and the thing's going to get kind of skewed here for a little bit. Where did he win? Yeah, Valero, Texas. Okay, I was right. So he won the week before the Masters, then played well at the Masters. But, I mean, you can see here, and again, it's just getting caught off in strokes gained total, but that's all you really need to see. 20th at the Tour, barely made the cut at the Northern Trust, was, almost definition of middling. 70 people at the BMW, he was 34th. He's not in the best of form, recent form. Now, he certainly has good form here. 12th at the WGC, a second at the Open, top 20. So he's played well this year. I'm talking recent form, as in FedEx Cup form, was not very good for him. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Wrong thing. Apologies. So I think he's a little better than this 18th. And especially when you factor him in with playing with Justin Thomas, who I'm, pretty high on, better, higher than 11th. I like Spieth a lot, especially considering the format, which I guess we should kind of go over now. In Ryder Cup scoring format, and I'm talking only to DraftKings, but I'm hoping it applies to whatever contest or whatever site that you use. In DraftKings, your captain is 1.5 times the price. So let's look at someone that's pretty easy here. Let's look at Shane Lowry. Shane Lowry, $6,000. Well, to double his price would be 12, but 1.5, so you take 6. What's half of 6? It's 3. So 6,000, 3,000. That's where you get the captainship of 9,000 on the price tag. The captain will gain 1.5 points that he normally would. That's why it costs 1.5. So if he would get 1 point for something, he actually gets 1.5 points. The way DraftKings does their points for the Ryder Cup, you get points. You get major points for winning a hole. I think it's 3 for each hole won. You get 0.75 for each hole halved, and you lose 0.75 for each loss of a hole. So therefore, it is much more advantageous to get people who are winning holes as opposed to having matches, which should be fairly obvious. But I mean, it is a sizable gap there to win a hole versus having a hole. So you just want to have guys win as many holes as possible. And then there are bonus points. Sorry, reaching for my second one. There are bonus points for holes not completed. So if a guy wins a match, say 2-1, so that means they're up 2 with 1 hole to go, they get bonus points for not having to play that 1 hole. Or even better, if somebody wins, say 5-4, you're up 5 with 4 holes to go. That's a lot of bonus points because there's 4 holes not being played. That is a huge bonus there. There's a couple other things, and then the individual statistics. In normal DraftKings, you will get bonus points for a streak of 3 birdies or better. 3 holes in a row of birdie or better. It's the same kind of concept here. If a player wins 3 holes in a row, that's the equivalent essentially. If they win 3 holes in a row, that's bonus points. That'll happen once per round. And then to replace the bogey-free round, if a player does not lose a hole in a match, if they just have the match completely, like both teams they have out, that's bonus points because nobody lost a hole. So if that's pretty big bonus points. If you don't lose a hole, don't look for that to happen very often. It might once or twice, but don't look for it to happen very often. But if it does happen for your guy, it's a lot of bonus points. I know there's a couple other things that I'm forgetting, but those are the big, more common ways to get points this week in the Ryder Cup. At least at DraftKings daily fantasy contests. Coming back to the price board here, we talked about DeChambeau, talked a little bit about Spieth. I like Spieth, especially, again, like I said, he's getting paired with Justin Thomas. I think that's a pretty formidable duo. I think they're going to play pretty well together. Schauffele playing with Cantlay. Of course, I like Cantlay. He's number one in my rankings, and therefore his partner should be getting a modicum of points too. I like that pairing a lot. And because Schauffele is he's only 400 cheaper by golfer, but he is 600 less in captainship. If you're looking at that team thinking that they're going to be good, I can't stress enough that you would want to roster Schauffele, not Cantlay. He's just cheaper. He's less owned than Cantlay. So if you're a believer in that team right there, I'll highlight them both. If you're a believer, because that's a pretty guaranteed team that Captain Stricker is going to run out there at least on Friday and see how it does. And you got to think that Captain Stricker is going to give them both rounds, the 4-some and the 4-ball, to let them get going. You got to think that he's going to give them that chance. If you think that team's going to be good, and I think it's going to be good, then you would definitely want to roster Schauffele. You might think about rostering them both, but if you want to make one a captain, you absolutely got to do Schauffele, since he is projected lower ownership and cheaper. And it's essentially the same team. So that's my feeling on Schauffele. Hovland, I really, really like this week. This course sets up well for Rory and Hovland as much as it does for DeChambeau, for DJ, for Brooks, Feno. As much as this course favors long hitters and the Americans are filled with long hitters, Europe's not short by any means. They've got Rory, they've got Rahm, they've got Hovland. To a lesser extent, Sergio. Sergio's really good off the tee. The Euros aren't short by any stretch of the imagination. So this course really sets up well for Hovland. He's fifth in my rankings. I like him a lot. It's a little upsetting to see him the fifth most projected ownership, because I really like him this week. Now, the question mark is, who is Captain Harrington going to pair him with? Because he's kind of a wild card. Obviously, having never played the Ryder Cup, does Captain Harrington, does Padraig Harrington put him with a seasoned guy like Lee Westwood, or maybe I see Shane Lowry is seasoned, but a lot of people don't realize he's a rookie for the Ryder Cup. This is his first Ryder Cup. So does Hovland go out with, say, a Sergio or a Paul Casey? Or does Padraig Harrington not mind, and he just says, you know what, let me put two of my best players together. Let me put Hovland with, Rory or Rahm, and just, say, beat it. Dare the Americans to beat it. So he's a kind of a wild card. I don't know how to treat Hovland in this format, only because I don't know who he's paired with. I like him on the individual level. It'll depend on who he's set out there with. With his struggles being around the green, I tend to think he would be best in a 4-ball setup, because he is so darn good with his irons. He is so darn good with off the tee. His long irons are great. He's off the tee is great. He hits it a mile. He plays par 4 as well. His around the green and his putting can be suspect. That's why I don't think it. Four ball seems the better format for him than four sums. At least if I were Captain Harrington, that's a thought process that I would be having. But he's certainly one of the most talented players in this field. I would be surprised if he didn't play three. I don't know if he'll play all four because, like I said, I don't envision foursomes, the alternate shot, being his best format. But I would be surprised if he didn't play three of the 4 rounds. But because he's an unknown wild card, at 34.5%, the 5th most owned golfer in the field, I would, like I said with Jon Rahm, I would curtail my ownership, or I'd find ways to perhaps look elsewhere on the price board only because of the unknown factors. And finally, in this price range, because we talked about D-Sham earlier, we'll talk about Dustin Johnson. He's been putting pretty well lately. He put pretty well this year, and I mean, everybody knows he could take advantage of par fives. His distance is fine, is great. Birdies are better, great. Devours par fives. He has not been good with his irons lately. He has not been good with his irons, and it affects his par fours, his long irons. He does not play well on Pete Dye courses for whatever reason. Even though he generally plays the RBC Heritage well, he does not play other Pete Dye courses well. So, with that, DJ's kind of a wild card too because he's got the quote scar tissue from the previous American losses. He's the oldest player on the American side at 37. He's got the most Ryder Cup matches. He is 7-9. Now the singles record is great. It's 3-1. He has not played well in foursomes, so alternate shot. He has not been great at 4-ball. It'll be interesting to see who he is paired with in team formats. My general thinking is someone like Colin Morikawa, where if you give Colin Morikawa DJ's length off the tee, I'm talking specifically for foursomes, like if you want to play alternate shot DJ, you give Morikawa DJ's length, and you give DJ Morikawa's iron capability. That sounds like a formidable duo. Now, whether it works that way or not, who knows? But that thought process seems to work. Somebody like DJ and Daniel Berger, who is just pretty darn solid all the way around. He's been best at the irons where DJ has struggled. Putting, Berger's no slouch as a putter. Proximity, Berger's 4th. But where Berger struggles, DJ tends to do well. Birdies are better, driving distance. So those two, Colin Morikawa, Daniel Berger, I see as being pretty good fits with Dustin Johnson. But Johnson's kind of like Victor Hovland. It's a little bit of a wild card. You just don't know who his partner is or what his pairing is. Now, you got to feel pretty good about the singles record. 3-1 is pretty hard to argue against. And considering he's the lowest owned golfer right now that we have talked about so far, I really like DJ in the sense of putting him on your DFS roster. I'm not sure I would captain him, but I would definitely consider, him on your roster for sure. Of the people that so far in the 9 and 8Ks who I'm thinking about captaining, it's definitely Rory, definitely Schauffele. I would love to captain Hovland, but again, he's got too many unknowns. I think Rahm is a little too expensive for my tastes. And kind of like the Cantlay and Schauffele scenario, if you're thinking Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth are going to be a good pairing, why wouldn't you just captain Jordan Spieth? He's $900 cheaper than Justin Thomas, and you're getting the same amount of points and less ownership. So, in that range, and I don't know how I feel about a Jordan Spieth captainship. Put put it this way: if it were individual, I would much prefer Justin Thomas to Jordan Spieth. But when you factor in the price, the team aspect, the lesser ownership, you'd have to captain Jordan Spieth in that scenario. So in here, so far in the 9 and 8Ks, Rory, Schauffele, DJ. Actually, really, it's just kind of Rory and Xander so far, just because they're so expensive, captainship-wise. It's not that Hovland's not a great player. He's got too many unknowns. Same with DJ. I've talked about my nervousness about DeChambeau. So really, in the top of the leaderboard, price board, I keep saying leaderboard, top of the price board, I am really kind of only singling in on Rory and Schauffele as my two captains so far. But that changes as we get to the 7Ks. So in the 7Ks, we have Tommy Fleetwood, Morikawa, Koepka, Tony Finau, and Sergio. Tommy Fleetwood's a complete pivot right now at 12.5%, and to a lesser extent, Brooks at 18.2%. Let's talk about Tommy Fleetwood here for a second. He's rated 23rd, next to last in my model. Take nothing away from him in France in 2018. Him and Francesco Mollywood were unbeatable. 4-1, both of them, because they both lost their singles matches. Actually, no, did they? I know Fleetwood did. I'm not sure if Molinari did, but so Fleetwood went 4-1. He won all 4 team sessions. Lost his singles match to Tony Finau, who we'll come up to in a second. I don't know how well Tommy Fleetwood's going to play this week. Again, we talked about it in the kind of the individual statistics. His game has not translated well to American soil, and how much of that success was, Molinari, how much was Fleetwood? That's certainly debatable. You can argue that all you want. I'm taking nothing away from Fleetwood in that aspect. I tend to think that they were just, riding some momentum, some crowd energy, and guys get hot. Fleetwood is not hot right now. He's not in good form. I have my doubts that Fleetwood plays well this week. Having said that, I think Padraig Harrington's going to send him out there knowing how well he played in France in 2018. I'm avoiding Tommy Fleetwood this week, or as much as I can. I mean, I've admitted that I'm going to have exposure to everybody in some way, form, or fashion, but I'm kind of avoiding Tommy Fleetwood. I don't have a good feeling about Fleetwood this week. And if you're willing to roster him, you're going to gain a lot of leverage on people if he's truly at 12.5%, or what's this, the third lowest ownership. You've got Lee Westwood at 9.5%, Wiesberger at 11.3%, and I'm sure that's just because he's so cheap. 11.3%. Then you got 2 at 12.5%. You got Fleetwood and Fitzpatrick. So if you're willing to take that gamble on Fleetwood, which is it's an okay gamble. I mean, he is 4-1 in the Ryder Cup. I just don't see it this week for him. His game is not translated to American soil, and if you're an American fan, you hope that stays true, and you hope that continues. I'm avoiding Tommy Fleetwood this week, and when I say avoiding, I mean really, really limiting my exposure to him. Colin Morikawa. This is another interesting player to discuss. Is he healthy, fully healthy from the Olympics? We don't really know. He says he is. His results would say otherwise. But he's a 2-time major champion. This course probably isn't the greatest of fits. It's favors length, and he's more of an iron player. He has been the worst putter on this is just bent, but he's the worst putter on bent. It's there's a lot to question there. I mean, you can't argue against the iron play. He's actually the best on Pete Dye courses in the field. Plays well in the wind. Plays these par 5s extremely well just because he's so accurate off the tee. I think this is the American equivalent to Victor Hovland. He's the wild card. Who do you pair with him? How do you deploy him? Because he has a very unique skill set. His irons are the best in the world. How do you emphasize that? How do you maximize that? Do you put that... I tend to think you would want him in foursomes, alternate shot. Again, I'm thinking someone like Dustin Johnson. You can give him some length off the tee. Perhaps Feno. Give him length off the tee. Put Brooks with him. That's the natural thought process, is to give him some length off the tee. Or even Bryson. Does Bryson and Colin Morikawa, how does that dynamic work? Do you think Colin Morikawa will, quote, handle the circus that Bryson comes with? The problem with the Morikawa Desham pairing, around the green, bad. Around the green, awful. So if they're not hitting greens, they're losing the hole outright. They're just going to lose the hole. And you don't particularly want Colin Morikawa to be the one putt. Now, he's going to have to make putts. But you don't particularly want him to putt. You want him to be the iron player. It'll be interesting to see how Captain Stricker deploys Colin Morikawa. At 20%, I like Colin Morikawa. If he's one of the lesser owned players this week, I'll take that. I'll take Morikawa and pray that he either gets hot with the flat stick or he has a partner that, say like a Dustin Johnson who's got the length and the putting. Put him with a, in case they split him up for a round, put him with Patrick Cantlay, who's been making putts. Cantley's not exactly short off the tee. Pairing was, I was going to say pairing with Sheffler. Scheffler's not a great putter either, but he's certainly got the length for it. Morikawa is... Hovland and Morikawa are the equals on their teams, the wild cards, the true wild cards. I don't know how you would deploy them. But I like Morikawa if at 20%. I don't know if I would be comfortable captaining him. Definitely rostering him. Moving to Brooks, he's even less ownership, but I can understand why. He's got that wrist issue. He's made some headlines, coming into this week. Now, this is big game Brooks. Like, if it's a big event, he should be playing well. At least you would think. But there's a lot of question marks around him. He's not been very good putting lately. The par fours, the around the greens, troubling. He's certainly great off the tee. So the drivable par fours actually have not been very good for Brooks this year. But we talked about earlier how he's good on peak dye, good with these long irons. I would not be surprised if Brooks only plays a round or maybe two in singles to rest that wrist for Sunday. That's why I'm going to limit my exposure to Brooks. I just don't know how much he plays, considering the health concerns. He says he's fine. He says he's ready to play and all that stuff. Players are going to say that. I am, if I'm wrong on Brooks and he plays all 4 rounds and goes 3-1 or 2-1-1 or 2-0-2 or whatever, then you know what? I'll just lose this week. That's the way it is. He's got a pretty good Ryder Cup record: 4-3-1, 2-2 in 4 ball, 1-1 in alternate shot, 1-0-1 in singles. So he's got a pretty darn good Ryder Cup record. He's got a little bit too many questions for me. Now, somebody I am interested in captaining, even if he's at 30.7%, is Tony Feno. I really like Feno this week. This course sets out well for him. Bomb. Just let him hit away. I think he's a better iron player than this has been showing here. And you can see, his proximity is 8th, but his strokes gained approach is 17th. His proximity is 8th. He's a lot better iron player than this shows. He's never been a great putter, but even so, on bent, he's done okay. It's actually the par 5s that he's been struggling with lately. But I like Tony Finau this week. I think I don't want to say it's clear, but I think you put him with somebody, say like a Berger or a Sheffler, maybe even a Harris English, where the putting, because Tony Finau can get a little shaky with the putter. He's certainly not Colin Morikawa-esque where you kind of cringe a little bit, but he can get pretty shaky. You put him, you pair him with somebody like Harris English, who's just steady with the putter. Or we talked about earlier, put him with somebody like Xander Schauffele if they split the Schauffele-Cantlay team. Put him with somebody who's just steady. I think Finau is going to thrive this week. I really do. I really think he's going to thrive. I think he got the monkey off his back, winning the Northern Trust. That the whole narrative of he can't win. He's a contributor, but he can't win. He got that narrative off his back. I think I don't want to say he free wills this, because obviously there's enough pressure, playing for USA and all that stuff. But I think he's got a little bit more leeway. I think he's got a little bit more able to take a breath and just play. I don't think he's got a monkey on his back. I like Feno a lot this week. Someone I'm definitely going to captain, even at a pretty high percentage. High, especially given the others in this price range. I like Tony Finau this week. Sergio, I like Sergio as a golfer. I don't know about the captainship, and that's mainly on one reason. And it's the same reason I like who I think his partner is going to be. I think Rahm and Garcia are going to be paired together. Two Spaniards, two players who know each other very well. Now, yes, they can. I mean, this is just the Spanish way. They can both get really hot under the collar. But boy, if they have any momentum, they're going to roll whoever they're playing. I think that's a pretty formidable duo to go up against, given a good set of circumstances, like a Friday morning, and they've got momentum. They're amped up. They're hyped up. The excitement. Sergio is no stranger to being not the crowd favorite, we'll say. I think that's a pretty formidable team, and I would want to roster them both, but not captain them. And Sergio's game is pretty darn good. It's pretty darn good compliment to Rahm's, to be honest. Sergio isn't the great at par fives. Rahm is. Sergio's not great at putting for obvious reasons that we've talked about many times on this show. It's not like Rahm is great, but I mean, what do you remember about Rahm at the U.S. Open this year? 17 and 18. Yeah, he made two pretty clutch putts. So, yeah, I like that pairing a lot, and therefore I would want to roster both. I don't want to captain either of them, but I want to roster them both. Paul Casey, I'm all over Paul Casey this week. Everybody is. His Ryder Cup record, to be honest, is not fantastic. It's not terrible. It's not fantastic. Like, Sergio is pretty darn good. He's 22, 12, and 7. A lot of that is in foursomes. I mean, look at that, 10, 4, and 3. He's dead even, 4, 4, and 1 in singles. But he is a team format player. Let me highlight the right row. 8, 4, and 3. This foursomes record, 10, 4, and 3. That's astounding. And that's why I think him and Rahm are going to be a pretty formidable foursomes duo. But going back to Paul Casey, good record. I mean, I say good, decent record. 4, 3, and 5. He's not going to cost you the tournament. He might not win you the tournament, but he might not cost you it. He doesn't have a lot of losses. He just has. He's steady Eddie, consistent. I like Paul Casey a lot this week. I really do. We're moving into the 6Ks. You can see I'm just so excited to talk about Paul Casey. I just skipped right over the fact that we're going into the 6Ks. His one area of concern has been the putting, but I mean, look at where else he is. There is no other red. There's a lot of high green in there, except for this putting. So if you put him with somebody like an Ian Poulter, who's a fantastic putter, you put him with, maybe Tommy Fleetwood is a pairing, maybe Bernd Wiesberger, Shane Lowry, but Paul Casey's just as steady as they come. Just steady as they come. I am all over Casey. I want all the ownership on him. It looks like a lot of people do. I'll set myself up for 5v5s. I don't care. I want Paul Casey. I'll put him here. I'll roster him. I'm hoping that that people are rostering him, not not captaining him, because I'm captaining him. I think he's going to do really, really well this week. He's at 68. Berger, if you've been a follower of the show, you know I'm a big Berger fan. I think he's going to do well this week. Again, to a lesser extent, Colin Morikawa, he's kind of a mini wild card. Who do you pair him with? Because he seems like he would fit almost anybody. He can certainly let the crowd, fuel him a little bit. He can get animated when he needs to. He's pretty even keeled otherwise. He's just a solid player at 18.8%. Give me a lot of rostership on him. Absolutely. I'm afraid to captain him because I don't know how much he plays. I think if he plays 2 to 3 rounds, this 18.8% is going to be a lot of value for you. I highly doubt he plays all 4 unless Captain Stricker sends him out Friday morning. He tears the world on fire and just rides a Tommy Fleetwood style heater. I don't see him playing all 4 rounds, but I'm pretty sure he's going to play more than 1. So in the 2 to 3 round phase, or number there, hopefully on the 3 end, obviously at 18.8%, give me a lot of Daniel Berger on the rostership. I won't captain him, but I'll roster him. Ian Poulter, what's there to say? People are playing him just almost for the singles knowledge alone. And it's not like he's just a singles player. I mean, his singles speaks for itself at 5-0-1. But he's 5-2 in 4-ball, 4-4-1 in foursomes. He's dead even in foursomes. 14-6-2 overall. Oh yeah, he's just a Ryder Cupper. That's what you say. He's a Ryder Cupper. It'll be interesting to see. Does Captain Harrington put him with somebody like Victor Hovland or a Bernd Wiesberger? Does he pair the experience with the rookieship or the youth? Somebody else like Matthew Fitzpatrick, even though he's technically not a rookie, he only played twice in 2018. He went 0-2. Like, does he put Poulter with Fitzpatrick and kind of let Poulter take the brunt or take the expectations and let Fitzpatrick just kind of play? Interesting to see, but I will definitely have some Poulter. Absolutely. I don't know how I feel about captain. I can take or leave Poulter as a captain. I can see the benefits. I can see the downsides. I really truly don't mean to be, wishy-washy on that. I can see the reasons for. I can see the reasons against. I'm definitely going to have rostership of him. I might have him a little bit on the captainship, but I'm certainly higher on Casey and Feno, Schauffele as these captains, and somebody who we'll talk about here in just a moment. Under Poulter at 6,200 is Tyrrell Hatton. You want to talk about guys who get under the collar? He's somebody who is he is a typical competitor. You think about a British bulldog. That is Tyrrell Hatton. He never quits. And that's what you want in a Ryder Cup, in a match play format. I have a little bit of concern of how he fits this course. He's not great on par 5s at all. He's one of the Euros that doesn't play well in the wind. He's got a lot going for him. He's a decent putter, good on approach, good on proximity. But his A game, his best part of his game is around the green, really, or short game. Now, the putting will play, obviously. There's putting. But he's known to be a rescue play. He's not as good as Jordan Spieth, obviously. I'm fixing that column. He's not as good as Jordan Spieth, but he's a par saver. And he does that with around the green play. I don't know how much that's going to play here, especially considering we've talked about the perils of Whistling Straits. I just looked at the time. I see that it's been going quite a bit long. I'm still wanting to make a couple lineups for you all. Might have to cut it to 2 or 3, but want to get through all of these players. So Hatton, I have my concerns about the number of times he plays. He's certainly low ownership, where if you take him and he plays 3 rounds plus the singles, it could be really pay off for you. I just have concerns of how often he plays. The next guy is the one I am the highest on of all the highs. I think this is a Shane Lowry week. I really do. He plays, we talked about it earlier, he plays windy well. He plays these Pete Dye courses well. Long course, difficult course. He rises to the occasion. You give me a very low amount of ownership on Shane Lowry compared to the other players. Very low amount of ownership. Give me all the Shane Lowry. Give me all of the Shane Lowry this week. And if he doesn't play well, I will lose. I'm captaining him. If I could captain him and roster him twice, I would. I just think this is a big week for Shane Lowry. There have been murmurings that him and Rory are going to play together. You know how I feel about Rory. I think this is a big week for Shane Lowry. I really do. There's not much more I can say. I mean, the stats speak for themselves too, especially these quote uncalculated stats. He's not the greatest off the tee, I'll give you that. But if it does get truly windy like Saturday, he knows how to play it. Look at his Open Championship win. He knows how to play those style of conditions. Because of off the tee, I mean, his driving distance isn't the great. He's not going to take advantage of the par 5s like most others. That's why you put him with somebody like Rory. Maybe even a Victor Hovland, even though that's 2 rookies. I mean, if you're not scared of 2 rookies, I would put that team together for sure. Lowry and Hovland. Even Lowry and Garcia. Garcia is good enough off the tee, long enough off the tee. I would be fine. So I think this is a big Shane Lowry week. Give me all the Shane Lowry. Moving into the 5Ks real quick. That way we can try to build a couple teams here. Scotty Sheffler. I like Sheffler a lot this week. This course kind of fits for him. He's pretty clearly the 12th pick, the last captain's pick for Captain Stricker. Stricker's been pretty outspoken about why he chose Scotty Sheffler. The course fit, the match play success, at least in singles. He's going to go out. He's going to go for broke. I won't say go for broke, but he can go out and get you birdies and eagles on par 5s. The putting's a little suspect. Again, I have some concerns on how often he plays. Kind of like Terrell Hatton in that regard. I have a little bit of concern of how often he plays. I do have some concerns about Fitzpatrick and how he plays, but I do think he's getting overlooked. At 12.5%, this is a pivot that I'm comfortable and willing to take, the risk I'm willing to take. Again, seeing these numbers of being the best on these par 5s of the distance, playing Pete Dye courses well, off the tee numbers. Yes, he's got some severe red stats as well. I like Fitzpatrick at the 12.5% ownership. That's an investment I'm willing to make. I definitely don't want to make him a captain. Definitely don't want to do that. But at 12.5, 5,600, I am willing to. This is the pivot that I'm going to make. Lowry, hopefully being the captain pivot. That's my goal this week, that's my hope is Lowry's the captain pivot, and I'll take Fitzpatrick as the player pivot. Harris English, this I think is probably one of the better pairs for Bryson. Bryson's the lightning rod. He's going to get a lot of attention, good and bad. Harris English, I don't think I've seen him get. If you imagine a roller coaster up and down, I'm pretty sure Harris English is like that. just he is so even keeled. I think that would be a good fit for Bryson. Game wise, I don't know. I think just personality. I think that would play well. And it's not like Harris English, can't go out and shoot low scores. He's not the shortest off the tee. He's not the longest. He's not the shortest off the tee. He plays well in the wind. I think this would be a good 4-ball partner for Harris English, or for Bryson would be Harris English. I think Harris English would be fine in foursomes. I don't know if him and Bryson would work in foursomes. Kind of like Scotty Sheffler. I don't know how much he's going to play. I would roster Sheffler more than English, even given the higher ownership. I don't know how much English plays. I'm going to put Lee Westwood and Wiesberger kind of in the same category. They're 22nd and 24th in my rankings. They're both, they're the lowest owned and second lowest owned. To be quite honest with you, I understand Westwood's Ryder Cup numbers are really darn good in the team format. 8-6-2, 9, 5, and 4. He does not. This is American solo. He does not arrive with good form. I'm avoiding Westwood as much as I could, or as much as I can. Wiesberger a little bit, but I think he's getting a tad overlooked. I think he's going to be a decent partner for somebody in 4-ball, or in foursome. I don't think he's going to kill you because he's pretty good with his irons. He's pretty darn good with his irons. He's not an abject failure on the greens. He's not great. He's not an abject failure on the greens. He definitely needs somebody who will drive the golf ball for the foursome partnership to work, like a Rory, like a Sergio, like a Rahm. Definitely needs the length, but his irons, he's not going to kill you with the irons. I'm gonna roster as little Wiesberger as I can. Just don't be surprised if Wiesberger wins, say, 1.5 points. Maybe he has his singles match and he helps win a foursome match because his irons are pretty darn good. So that's what I wanted to say for Wiesberger. Let's make a couple of lineups here real quick. I'm going to try to refrain from doing the chalky type stuff because I don't know the percent ownerships between captainship and regular. But here's a lineup that I've been kind of really, really toying around with. Obviously, I talked about Shane Lowry being my hopeful pivot of captainship. Matthew Fitzpatrick. I've been combining that with, say, a Rory, again, a Cantley, let's see, I need to look at prices again real quick. It's getting cut off, I apologize. So I got 8,600. I mean, that's a Spieth. Like if I wanted to double up and make that like a Xander, so Xander's at 86, so I could go something like Xander and Hovland, Xander and DJ. I've talked about how I don't like Fleetwood. If I wanted to go big boom or bust, like I could go Paul Casey, and I'd still have room to upgrade somebody here. So, like, if I wanted to do the partnership that I think is going to play pretty well, I still have 1,800 here. I could move Fitzpatrick. I could move up on Paul Casey. If I wanted to put a John Rahm in there. I've been toying around with this kind of roster construction. Maybe not Fitzpatrick at the very bottom. Maybe I can go upwards of maybe an Ian Poulter. I still have 1,000 here. If I didn't want to touch the teammates, if I think the teammates are going to play well, you know how much I feel on Rory. I like Paul Casey, but for example, I could go like Tony Finau. There are a lot of options there. At Shane Lowry at only 9,000 in captainship. Oh yeah, there's a lot of options there for you. That's why I like Shane Lowry a lot, especially as your captain. He just gives you so many options. Let's go something probably a bit more common, and you're going to have to find your uniqueness in other places. But let's look at, say, a Rory as your captain, because I think he's going to probably play pretty darn well. This is where I've been really doing a Rory and Fitzpatrick kind of combo, if you will. Let's say we do Justin Thomas, Paul Casey, and then in the middle here, you average in 72. That's you can do like a Brooks and Sergio. If you think Brooks, I have my concerns about Brooks, so I wouldn't do this. But perhaps you aren't afraid of him, so you could do like a. Sorry, let me roll that over for you all. So you have a Brooks and Sergio. You could go. Maybe you want to take a true wild card here. Maybe you want to go say like Colin Morikawa. That leaves you with 68, which I believe is Paul Casey's. No, yeah, it's Paul Casey's. So maybe if you're not high on Fitzpatrick, you could go maybe drop down and say maybe he does play Lee Westwood more than once, or this gives you Tony Finau. So I think a lot of people are going to probably do like a Rory and JT, a Rory and Cantley, Rory and maybe even Rahm. I think Rory's going to be a fairly popular common pick, and I'm certainly going to have captainship of him, absolutely. But I'm going to, again, I've been focusing on Shane Lowry as a captain. I think Xander might be a potential pivot captain. Tony Finau I like, Paul Casey I like. So anyway, that's going to do it for me in the DFS portion. Again, remember, tomorrow I am going to have a special show where I am going to make my predictions. I'll give you who I think is going to be the winner of the Ryder Cup this year. It's 47th Ryder Cup, I think. And we're going to have some fun here. I've got a tab here that says I'm the Capitan. I'm the Capitan, and I'm going to send out my teams for the USA and for Europe and see how I line them up. I'm going to do my best to pretend I don't know what's going on the other side and try to predict what the other side's going to be. But since I'm doing both, I kind of have a little bit of knowledge. But it's going to be fun. I'm going to have fun with it. I hope you all join me. If I get enough interaction, maybe I'll just put up a poll. Who do you all think? Who do you all want to send out here or next and all that stuff? It's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to that episode. Just to kind of take a step away from the seriousness and the betting and all, and just put yourself in a captain's position. So I hope you join me for that. This is going to do it for the DFS. Again, as always, reach out to me on social media or in the comments below for anything that you're wanting to see. I'm going to switch over here and come over here. But again, let me know what you're all thinking. I'm excited. It's the Ryder Cup week. A lot to look forward to. Please tune in tomorrow. Hopefully you can see the excitement. I'm just going to have fun with it tomorrow. So for all of your DFS lineups, your contests, your bets, tonight, this week at the Ryder Cup, and every other week, may all your bets be profitable.